When you're in a job role and things are not going well, how do you know when to walk away? I feel I switched cameras and it wasn't intentional. I did that with my mind. I'm so sorry. I feel like I have certain things in my brain that are like, oh, if this is happening, I know it's a dead end, or it's not going anywhere, or I'm not going to be able to make a difference. What do you have to know when it's time to walk away?
So I think, first of all, that time to walk away depends on each of us personally. Like,
sure.
I may be more dogged about it. It's like, I'm not going to go away. I'm not going to let this beat me, right? And I'll keep trying. And after a little while, it'll dawn on me that this is just futile. I'm banging my head against a brick wall. Another person might say, well, I don't want to try that hard, and the job market's really good right now, so see you later. I'm not vested anyway, right? So I think it varies, but for me, it's like this. If you wake up in the morning and you go, oh, God, I've got to go to work today. For me, that's a red flag, right? Seriously, because I would really not do it. I would just go, screw that. I'm just going back to sleep.
Yeah.
That's what I will do, and I won't go to work. And I've already reached that point that it's time to walk away.
Yeah.
Other people, they just say, well, it's a paycheck, right? It keeps the mortgage paid. But you can do that no matter what. I mean, you could do that at other places, doing exactly what you're doing, where perhaps your input is more valued, right? So for me, I can say it's that motivation, that urge to get up and go to work to make a difference. If I don't get that, it's time to go away. Yeah. And at first, I might not just like, okay, it's time to leave. I might just say, well, why is that happening? Is there anything I can do to change that?
Yeah.
Or at least to influence that? Let me try that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I want to pause there because for me, this is one of the things, this is like an emotional topic for me because I was in a position where my company got bought out and I stayed way longer than I should have because the way I felt was this is my company where I've been here since the company didn't turn a profit. I worked at a company for like 13, 14 years, something like that. And when I first signed on to the company, there's like some backstory time. When I first signed on to the company just had barely made it out of that. Like, we got to to be able to pay everyone, we got to run out and make a sale. They had just gotten over that point right when I joined the company. Over the next decade or so, they got to the point where they were making, they made their first like recurring. They switched to a recurring revenue model, and they were making $1 million a year, and they were making $20 million a year, and they were making $25 million a year. They just grew over and over and over. And at a certain point in time, the company got sold, and then like I made nothing because I wasn't an executive. I was just a worker in the company. Listen, I don't like editing a lot, so I'd appreciate you not make me edit videos.
That's an example where you don't feel like you are valued.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It wasn't even for me, it wasn't even I didn't leave that company because I didn't feel valued. I was a manager at the time in that company. And it was the fact that the people that I was directly supervising were getting lost in the shuffle. That was what upset me the most. Okay, that like maybe if I was just an independent contributor in a company, I would have felt different.
Right.
Maybe I would just put the screws to them and be like, hey, like I see you guys, your company doesn't seem real stable right now. You can pay me $30,000 more, or I'm gonna hit the road. And they would have been like, I don't care. I remember when the company got bought the second time. I specifically remember I had a parking spot. This is I'll tell you how old school the company was. Like, you sign on to this home, like. Yeah, when you were a manager, you got a parking spot. That's the way this company was. And I remember...
Was it close to the door?
No, but it was on the first floor of the parking garage. That was snazzy. Yeah. And I remember I parked over here, and then all the executives parked over here. And I remember after the company got sold the second time, and none of the employees had any stock or anything, because the first time the company got sold, they took all the stock away from all the employees before they sold it. before they sold it, by the way, not gave the employees their cash out. And no, that's not what happened. No, they took all the stock away from the employees at wherever they valued the cost, and then they sold the company for the new cost, and then nobody got, like, only the executives or, you know, the key stakeholders got. Anyway, the second time they sold the company, all the C-level who had actual stock in the new, whatever the new stock program was, I remember like a couple months after, maybe like 2 months, I don't remember. I really don't remember the amount of time after they sold the company a second time, and all the employees got left out of that. I remember walking by the executive row of where they all parked, and they all had brand new BMWs and Mercedes. I was like, maybe I kind of got screwed in this exchange. I remember thinking to myself, you know what I mean? And all the people under me who haven't gotten raises in like 2-3 years because the capital firm that bought the company was trying to keep all the money real tight and stuff. I don't remember why we were talking about this.
I get it. Yeah. So, you know, as you're going by this row of shiny cars, you're thinking, maybe I should have had that hubcap right there. You know, maybe that, but I didn't even get that. I get that. So I can relate to this. My first job was in England, and back then, if you got a job at a certain level, you got a company car. They give you a car, right, as a perk. Now, depending on the company, etc., sometimes you have to pay for your own insurance, but everything's negotiable. So there's a dollar amount, and they say, well, you can go get, you know, this boring old sedan or whatever up to this amount. I'm like, this is my first job out of school or out of college. I'm not gonna go drive that thing. It's an old man's car. I want to drive a GTI. You know, so they're like, oh well, you know, that's another $3,000 more. Well, let's talk. So we negotiated, and I got a year-old GTI, not a brand new one, but they paid for it. Right?
I'm sorry, you're negotiating for a better vehicle, and this is your first job out of college. You're like, let's have a conversation.
Let's have a talk
I'm
about
worth
this.
the better vehicle.
I want something that's representative of what I am.
Wow.
Right? So, you know, I'm dynamic. You know, I'm a go-getter. I'm not going to be seen driving around in that old car. I can do that 10 years from now. So anyway, the reason I mention this is I can relate to what he's saying. All the executives had all of these big, posh vehicles. And they were close to the door, right? So they didn't get rained on. We had parking way over in the other garage, but there's other perks that they have access to. Like every week there'd be a service that comes out and washes their cars. I'm like, I want in on that. So we talk again, and I'm like, okay, listen, how bad does it look to see a young employee drive out in a filthy car? I mean, it's just a bad image, right? So I got that now. So they wash my car. The reason I'm mentioning all this is, if you don't speak up, you don't get, right? Yeah. You have to speak up.
I agree.
To get. Now, to your point about what happened when the company got sold, I lived through that here during the internet bubble. I was a paper millionaire with a company that shall remain nameless. They're no longer around anyway. But yeah, there's like a whole bunch of people, all the project managers, we were given a whole bunch of stock. So it was great, right? And there's a lot of hypotheticals because the company is getting ready to go IPO. So we're looking at this, and they put these carrots out. They say, well, you project managers are out there, you know, in the field, working with clients, and, you know, go hit this number. So we have numbers we have to hit every month in order for the company's valuation to keep going up. And of course, as the valuation goes up, you get richer on paper.
Right.
And you get richer in practice if the IPO actually happened, and this is important, and if you actually vested, right? Because you could have all these shares and the company could go IPO and you'd get nothing if you weren't vested.
Right. Absolutely. So
that was another negotiation. It's like, well, you know, if I stay here 3 years, I might vest half of my shares.
Right. Or the more likely scenario is you slave your ass off waiting for 4 years to vest or whatever it is, 5 years to vest or whatever it is, and then they hire some hot talent to try to break into a market or whatever and vest that person immediately.
Sure.
And you're like,
yeah, well, another scenario is, and this is a small print, they completely have the right to buy back your shares at the rate that they gave you, not the prevailing market rate.
Yeah, right.
Right? So you worked really hard to bump up the price up to a certain level, and then they can just buy it back for cheap.
Yeah, because it doesn't mean anything until someone's offering something for the company.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly.
It could mean anything.
Having these conversations with my colleagues, right, other project managers, etc., and they're all going around these Porsche dealerships. I'm going to buy me one of those in red. And I'm
Sure.
like, guys, you don't have the money, okay? Just don't worry about which one you're going to buy. It'll still be there. Just wait till you have the money, you know.
You know what the funny thing about me passing all those all those brand new vehicles is when I was when I started my career when I was in my mid 20s, I would think about like that row of $70,000-$80,000 BMWs or whatever. I'm like, oh wow, look at those guys, they're really successful. But if I'm like in my mid 30s, I was passing that row of vehicles and be like, these guys can't manage their money at all. Why would you buy a $90,000 BMW? Yeah, I was like, dude, you even have your oil change. You're gonna pay $1,000. What are you wasting your money on, dude?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a different issue in the UK because these guys that had those Jaguars and all these expensive vehicles, they only kept them for 2 years.
Right. Yes.
And then they flipped.
Yeah.
Sure.
So what you could do is you could make them an offer to buy their car.
You're right.
At what they would get back for, right, at the dealership.
Yep.
And then you turn around and sell that car immediately, and you would pocket a decent chunk of change.
Yeah.
So I sold 3 of them. I bought them from my boss, and I sold them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like every 2 years, I go, hey, is it time yet? Right? When are you getting a new car? Right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's a side gig.
That is a side gig.
But
Oh, my
coming back
goodness.
to our issue about
topic.
when's it time to leave. So one of the
right.
reasons I didn't leave that company for a while is because, we talked about how valued you feel or don't feel.
Mm-hmm.
So my job involved working crazy hours. Like sometimes I'd work till late at night.
Sure.
Not just me, but other people in
Sure.
IT as well.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Doing upgrades, whatever else it was.
Mm-hmm.
But that also meant that they gave us some flexibility. So you can come in till noon if you didn't want to, because you're working till 8 at night. They had a cafeteria on site. This was the headquarters. This is a global headquarters. So they had a cafeteria on site, free food for everybody, lunches and everything. So, of course, you make friends with people in the cafeteria. They know that you're IT, right? So they'd ask you, are you working late? When you're working late, let us know. And if you let them know, what they would do is they would put a little something in the microwave for you. So what I'm saying is, little things like that added up for me, right? Like at Christmas time, they would give everybody a cash bonus, but everybody got it. So it didn't feel like you're any different.
You got to get the microphone snatch when you're talking. You got to get that thing down.
Oh,
You
is
be
it
like,
recording?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Listen, you're aggressive enough. You can do it.
I am aggressive.
You have a very good voice and energy for this recording. I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here. It's good to be here.
I'm glad you're here as well. Yeah, that's much better. Yeah.
Let's talk about
You
the
have more.
subject, please. When is the right time to walk away? I wanted to ask this question specifically to Brian and Om. Considering your years of experience, you can say you're an Agile coach, you're working as a Scrum Master. Do you feel that you've experienced some stagnancy, and how do you continue to stay inspired in your role?
Oh, can I just add one thing to that, the question? Especially being a consultant. Because I think that makes a difference between being an employee at a company with a product and being a consultant, disconnected from the project, whatever it is. I think there's a difference there.
There absolutely is. And to your point, Jessica, I've walked away many times before, but never as a consultant, right? But as a consultant, I have walked away from a client. So there's a difference there, right? As opposed to the company I worked for.
Exactly.
And so we tackle that first because that's the easy one. Walking away from a client. So we talked about this earlier in the podcast that you're not going to necessarily help every single client, right? Sometimes you have to walk away. And by walking away, you're actually helping them because you can't transform everybody. Not everybody wants to be transformed, right? They're not willing to go through the pain. They say they want to, but then they're not willing to go through the pain. So in that case, as a client, you're perfectly okay to just say, this isn't for you, this isn't for us, right? Let's just agree to disagree and move on. That's okay. But as far as an employee walking away from the company you worked for, I think we were talking about this earlier. The day, for me, it starts with the day I wake up and dread going to work. That's when I say, well, why then, right? What else could I be doing instead? And that just gets the wheels going. But it doesn't mean I just throw in the towel because I'm going to try. I'm going to try to see if I can salvage the situation, especially if I like the company that I'm working for. Then I would see if I can, change that dynamic in any way. If I can, great. If I can't, then just be upfront and cut the cord. Don't linger. I think it's good for the company and good for the employee to do that.
A follow-up question to that. I'm curious to hear from both of you on that subject. Does your ego ever play a role? Do you ever think that, maybe this title is beneath you?
I don't think my ego plays a role in the title so much. But, I'd be lying if I told you that it never plays a role. It's always there in the back of your mind. It's like, why should I do this? I've been doing this for 10 years. Surely I've got to move on to something else now, right? But then the other side of it, is this the right time? Is this the right time for you? And is this the right time for your company to give you that opportunity? So there's two sides to that, right? I think you have to pretty much navigate those waters, right? And just decide what's right for you. Yeah. I think I mentioned to you earlier, the titles really don't mean a whole lot. What was the title for Scrum Master that we were talking about earlier?
I really...
A process janitor?
Process
I like
janitor.
that.
Isn't that funny?
I like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Brian, same question.
I don't remember what the question was.
What?
I don't remember what the question was. I want to take a shot at answering because the problem is my mind is moving on to where I want to go with this. I just don't know how to get to where I'm from to where I want to go.
Okay.
So while you're waiting for that bus, can I take
Nope.
a shot at it? For me, stagnancy is when I stop learning. When I stop learning, it's boring. So I still get up every day and think, I'm going to make a difference, right? But I'm not evolving, right?
Yeah.
I'm not learning anything new.
Yeah.
That's stagnancy for me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to throw in the towel at work necessarily. It just means I need to do something to keep learning, whatever that is.
Yeah.
It could be take a course, teach something, right? Because if you teach something, that's the best way to learn.
I felt that way when I was a research manager. I felt I'm sticking around. I know I could get a lot more money by moving to a different company. This is specifically the point of my career when I was a QA manager. I was a QA manager for 3 years. And I'm not learning anything in this spot where I'm the QA manager. And you're in middle management, so it's the worst place to be because you can't get away from the people under you having problems because you got to help them solve their problems. And you can't get away from upper management because they're coming to you to delegate the resolution of problems. So I can't get away from anyone's problems. Like it's terrible. You're stuck in the middle of everything. And I definitely wasn't learning anything. I mean, maybe you can make the case. Well, you're middle management. You're learning to delegate and you're learning skills that could be used at an upper level management, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, that wasn't really true because I was never going to be a VP there. But the stagnation was okay in that instance because I felt at that point in my career, it wasn't about me. It was about passing along my skill and opportunities to the other people that I would hire. Because I had 6, 7, 8 people working for me at that point that I hired. I hired the whole department. So it was different. My mindset was in a different place at that point. So yes, I was stagnating in my career. I wasn't learning anything new. And the management at the time, they were all garbage. The company had been purchased at that point, and all the executives at that point were they were not the visionaries that their leadership and direction were going to take us to the future. They were just holding to get the company to whatever point where they were going to sell it. And everybody knew. Everybody in the company knew. That's why in that point in that company, we couldn't retain top talent. Because everyone who came in knew that it was just a stepping stone, for the next thing. So it was a crap position. Right? That's always difficult. That's why it's difficult for me to answer that question. Because in that position, I knew what was happening. But there's a certain point in it's not in your career. There's a certain point in your life. I remember that point in my life, my kids had just been born. And the goal and purpose of my life at that point was not to further my work career. It had shifted to other things. So it worked for me at that point in my life, but at a certain point you grow past that. Well, this is not getting me anywhere anymore. Where I knew where it was time to go, I'm the type of person where I hang on way too long. I emotionally and mentally attached to things, and I hang on way too long. But once you're attached to things, you'll be the only one left at the end. Why am I the only one caring anymore? It's
Probably
like,
with relationships too. It's everything.
It's everything. It's everything. Yeah.
Well, so I know Brian pretty well, and so I wanted to specifically ask this question. Everyone is familiar with the DISC profile, right? High D, decisive, high influential. Brian, I know you mentioned before that you were in a work environment in which you learned that your personality profile dramatically changed.
Oh yeah.
And that served as an indication for you that you weren't acting as your authentic self, and you needed to leave that environment.
Yeah, I hated it. Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah, when I was a team lead, I was pretty equal in almost every aspect except for, I can't remember, S or C, one or the other. Because as a team lead, you just kind of got to push through organizational barriers and just get things done. I can't remember if it's S or C. I think it's compliance, whatever the C category is. They different disc profiles call it different things. Yeah, conscientious. Yeah, I can't remember. One of the others is just getting things done. So it's like dominance and influence and structure were all kind of equal, just trying to push things through. And then after I was a Scrum Master for 2 years, especially on projects that were low trust, high fear type environments, I saw a difference between my I went super low and my D went super low for dominance. I don't remember what it was called, dominance. Where I was just kind of rolling over and doing whatever for people. I kind of hate this. I kind of don't like this about myself at all. That was the environment that was being in that environment for almost 2 years. That's what that environment asked of you. It's just, look, we don't value your opinion very much. Just do whatever we say. And I was like, I see what you're doing here, and I kind of quit. I'm out. I don't like this anymore.
And that's surely a sign to move on.
Yeah. The issue in that environment was it was a very large organization, and there was no one there to kind of check you, to kind of bounce your performance off of other people. To say, hey, I really know that you're this type of person, but I see you doing this in meetings, or I see you doing this in your plannings. Are you sure that's the best way to do it? First of all, there was no one looking out for you as a person in your development in that environment. Second of all, there was no one there to kind of check the way you were doing things. No one to give you feedback on, I think you're being effective at this and you're not being effective at this, and maybe try whatever. Nobody looking out for you. So in an environment like that, I don't like being in this environment because it's kind of cutthroat. We were talking about this before, whereas it's kind of environment. If someone's like, hey, can you do this one thing for me? And you do it as a favor for them, and you don't do it well, then it's your fault because it didn't go well. But if you do it well, then they delegated so great to you. I'm not interested in that. I don't want to be in that environment. There's nothing I can do there. And if I'm a resource manager in that environment, I don't want my people in that environment. Well, that was
good. Thank you for that.
Yeah, all right. That was a feel-good moment.
Let's move things over to Tricia. Trisha's here, and she's our guest.
Yeah,
she's our guest. Okay.
So, Tricia, I would love to hear from you. Obviously, you've worked in other places. When did you know it was time to walk away?
Well, it was different reasons for different places. I'll go with the very last place. It was a true startup in the way that they were working us. It was limited people doing. I was the Scrum Master. The actual title was Agile Project Manager, which I know. And so I was the release manager and the Agile Project Manager for 2 teams that built apps. I can't mention the name, but it's a company that makes mobile applications. But we had 2 teams and 5 mobile applications on each team. So full mobile apps, 10. I managed 10 of them, 2 teams. So it was just ridiculous. How do you even get anything done? And it was 18 hours a day, the expectation. I remember one Saturday morning I was sick, and the COO she was just a ball buster. And I guess you have to be when you're out there and you're trying to spin these companies up. You just have to work your fingers to the bone. When you don't have vested interest in that, it's a little bit more difficult. When you don't have equity or there's nothing coming back to you, it's kind of difficult. And I remember one Saturday morning, and this was right near the end. It was a Saturday, and it was sports related, so we worked all the time. It didn't matter. And I'm sick. I'm trying to get out of the bed. I realize that I'm late. I'm sick. I fall out of the bed because I'm so upset that I'm sick, and I'm like in the covers. I'm like laying down. I'm like, what am I? It's Saturday morning. I'm running around. I'm hurting myself. And then I said, I just can't work. And she says, in front of a chat, Tricia's sick today. Tricia's called in sick today. I'm like, when did Saturday become a call-in sick day? And I just realized that I had gotten enough experience. It was like 9 months, 10 months worth of experience. And it just wasn't worth the stress that I was being put under. I had learned enough. You learn enough in the first 9 months. And it's like, okay, I've done that now.
Yeah.
I'm good. So that was that experience. It was, and other ones that were different, but you just wake up and you're like, I'm not putting up with this shit anymore.
Yeah, that's what I see.
He does it all the time.
Actually, I try not to curse. No, our team agreement is we don't mention company names or people's names, because otherwise this would just be a rant.
Yeah, getting a lot of trouble.
And I generally try not. I curse occasionally, but I generally try not to. Anyway, that wasn't the point of what we were talking about, which is I feel
being
like,
abused.
Yeah, being abused. Yeah,
Yes.
but that's why a lot of people, especially in the Agile space, I look through people's, whenever I interact with, especially on large projects, I'll look through their LinkedIn profiles and stuff, and I'll see that they don't spend more than a year or two in places. Exactly, because of the way that, like, they get experience and then they get beat up in the actual, you know what I mean? Especially especially in Scrum. Like the last project I was on as a product owner, like I started with 3 teams, and they were like, "Oh, your gift of being good at being a product owner / manager is let me give you more teams." And I was like, "I got 5 teams. This is ridiculous. The overhead for one product owner is 20%." And now you give me 5 teams, it's 100% overhead.
And then they get mad when you don't perform, and they wonder why.
We could be way more efficient if you just brought one more person in to split the load. Maybe they take 2 teams and they really push forward fast with these teams, and then I'll deal with the painful customers, the painful pieces of business. But there's some terrible part of interacting with people. It's not even a business thing. It's just a terrible people thing. What we talked about earlier, which doesn't really fit into any of the categories. I don't even know if I'm going to post what we talked about earlier. I probably am going to. Now I'm talking about it. I'm going to need to post it. But like people have deficits in their personality. They just don't know how to deal with certain stresses, or they're just not good at talking to people. We were talking about intergenerational traumas, whereas your parents don't know how to deal with a certain thing, so they pass that stress along to the children, and the children never learn how to deal. Like people that don't. I'm trying to think of a good. We talked about this for like 30 minutes.
We did. There's a whole segment on that.
We talked about it for like 30 minutes. I don't know if I can use any of it because it doesn't relate to Agile in any way, shape, or form. There's no hashtag I can add to intergenerational trauma, psychological development of children, not passing your shortcomings on to your kids. This is part of that. You're going to deal with people who have huge shortcomings as people. And you'll be like, well, I want to be good in my career, but I also don't want to deal with these people who are just really shitty people. Now, career aside, they might be fantastic salespeople or fantastic product owners, but they had terrible parents or terrible circumstances coming up, and then just they've never gotten over it, you know. And they're not putting in any effort to try to get over it. So what are you going to do at that point? You're going to be a Scrum Master to take them aside one-on-one and be like, hey. You're a really crappy person. You should try to be a better person, because being a crappy person it'll hinder you for the rest of your life. Yeah, it'll ruin everyone else's day who interacts with you. How do you tell someone they're a terrible person? That's kind of what I'm getting at with this. Well, Jessica, I'm like your thoughts on this, because you're absolutely fantastic at being. You're a really terrible person. Let's talk about that.
I've definitely had these conversations, but haven't used those words. But I wanted to ask Om or Tricia either. Have you ever been in a work environment in which the work was great, right? It was stimulating, you enjoyed it, but the people you had to deal with and the politics were toxic?
Yeah, this was another one of our podcast topics in the past is, we talked about how projects are easy until you add people, right? Then they get really complex pretty quickly, because people are dynamic, complex beings. So we're not predictive. So yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely been there where the work has been fascinating, and then you have these other variables, these dang humanoids that completely ruin it for you, right? But I think ultimately you have to look at it from your own lens and say, what do I want to get out of this, right? Is it that I want this work experience because this work domain is fascinating and I need this to grow? Or is it that I need to work with these difficult circumstances with these people, and that's really where I need to grow? Yes, the work is interesting, but this is really the challenge. Where do you feel like you need to extend?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And everyone does that differently based on their own wants and needs and desires.
Yeah. Tricia, same question.
Yes, and mine was a little bit different. It was my first job out of college, but now I went to college later after I raised my kids. So I graduated in 2012, and just to go back to what we said about ego too, I'll tie that back in. I graduated, I got a bunch of loans, and I was an executive assistant. You can just entry level before I had kids, or while I was raising them, just to do something. And then I went to college, got my degree, and I needed a job right out of college. Yeah. And my degree was in elementary education, and it was summer. And so I needed I wasn't going to be a teacher anyway. I needed to make more money, but I ended up forgetting my ego.
Elementary education, that's Scrum Master,
yes.
101 there.
That's how I got the job. So I took a step back and I took an EA role to get my foot in the door of this place. And it was hard. I just spent how much money on a degree, and I'm doing exactly the same thing. And I had to swallow my pride a little bit. It ended up being the best thing because that's how I got into technology. Yeah. And I stayed there miserable with very, very toxic people because I needed the experience. Right. I needed to be a product manager for so much time. And everybody just leave. I'm like, I can't. I have to have just a little bit more. Right. And when I left, I was able to get a job at a huge finance company, which is what I needed. I needed that. You can be a product manager here in this dinky little nonprofit. Can you do it at a huge global organization? Yeah. And I did, but I wouldn't have gotten there without biting my tongue for 5 years and putting up with it.
Wow,
so sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. That was the second part of what I was saying, right? You need to work with those people so you grow, and that's what I think I heard you say.
Right.
So yeah.
Ryan, any thoughts? Have you worked with challenging people?
No, man.
Never.
No, man. Are you kidding me? I'm super simple about work. I know what success looks like. I know what garbage looks like. But if I'm by myself, if I'm solo on a job, I can get over it and swallow it and deal with it. But if I have people working for me, you know what I mean, or people that depend on me, then I can't do it. Then we're gonna get in a land war in Asia every single time. And I'm okay losing it. I'm 100% okay losing it. Because I know what a successful project looks like. But sometimes you can't overcome those egos.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's been most challenging for me is when I have really challenging superior, and especially when you're newer in your career, you just kind of have to deal with it. To your point, you have to put in the time.
Your time.
That's right. And I think superiors know that too, so they know they can mistreat you oftentimes because you're sticking around no matter what.
Right. We talked about this in the session earlier today.
It's funny how these are interrelated.
Yeah,
everything kind of.
Because I think something I brought up was I'll just walk away and say, I'll be like, no, I'm not doing that. Ball's in your court. What are you gonna do? Fire me? Here we go. I was a hiring manager, so I know the cost that comes into. I'll just fire this person, and then I'll wait 3 to 6 months to hire another person to be able to. Oh wait, no, I won't. Because I'll just get torn up by my superiors if I do it. So I know the terrible spot that you can put people in when you're I used to do that all the time. I was such a terrible team lead when I was a team lead. Sometimes I feel bad. I told you this before when we were working together, as a Scrum Master product owner. I feel bad the way I treated people in the past. On one hand, on the other hand, I don't feel bad because them. They should know better. Because I was a team lead and I'd be like, no, we're not doing that. And you should have pushed back, Well, nobody who's in the manager level is going to do that because they don't want to think. At that point, you have equity or you're making a good salary. You don't want to jeopardize that stuff, especially if you're in a larger company. And I completely understand that. I forgot where we were going with this.
I don't know. Well, the right time to walk away.
If you...
What did you say?
I think it's a feeling. I think you know.
Yeah.
I think you know. It's just like anything else in life. When you leave a partner, when you leave, it's just anything. It's all, you just feel it. And you may second guess yourself, but deep down inside, when you start peeling it away, you already know the answer.
That's wise. What?
I need another drink.
Before you got here, we were talking about, our first, I was talking about my first job and just going in and negotiating the crap out of things.
That was your first job?
That was my first job when I was talking about. That's what he did in
his first job.
Wow.
I was negotiating, because back in England, when you got a first job at a certain level, you get a company car, and they gave you a crappy car because they know you're a kid out of college, right? And so there's a money cap, and they go, just go buy a sedan or something for that. I'm like, how bad would it look if I drove out of here in that? I can do that in 10 years from now, because everybody who's driving those cars are 10 years plus at this company, right?
Yep.
So I negotiated to a GTI, and they gave me it, but it was a year older. I didn't care, So yeah, and then I negotiated a car wash for it every week.
Good.
So yeah, there's a
And very important.
Yeah, it is.
So I was giggling to myself when you were telling that story, because so many people struggle with imposter syndrome, especially when they're getting started in their careers. And here Om is negotiating as soon as he walks into his first job.
But I have to tell you, imposter syndrome is real. I feel it too.
Really?
I do, yes. I think all of us do at some point or the other, right?
You got the
It
wrong
is
guy.
real.
I don't at all.
You never?
Really?
No. No.
I
No, 'cause
used to
most-
feel it,
No.
but I don't anymore.
Statistically, product managers have one of the highest levels of imposter syndromes.
Really?
Yeah, you should look at the statistics on that.
That's because they're told that they're wrong all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. See, again, like this
And
is
there's no right and wrong with developing a product.
No, there's right and wrong. I'm right and there. The customer's always wrong. The customer's terrible. They're always wrong.
It's just what you decide to. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've ever made a catastrophically wrong decision.
No.
Yeah.
So I mean, everything can be. It's software, people. But yeah, I mean, my title now is VP of Product.
It's a nice title.
It's a great title. But could I go to another company right now and be a VP of Product? Absolutely.
Sure.
Not.
Why not? Why not?
I just don't think that. Depending on the size of the product or the company, maybe. But I mean, I took a risk. But I have equity in the company. I'm not going to just come in and be a product owner after investing in it.
Sure.
So I want the VP of Product title, but
Sure.
having a title where you kind of nobody else would put me in that role. Every day I'm like,
That's
do I
yeah,
deserve
but
this?
that's
You lose
Yeah,
that stuff now, like now.
yeah. My inner dialogue serves me no good purpose at all, because my inner dialogue is nothing but negative to me. My inner dialogue is absolutely this is my worst enemy. But if you can do that job at one place, there's nothing stopping you from doing that job at another place.
You're
Like
not wrong.
it's just you got to get there and you got to like get with the key people and understand what the product does, and then start believing in it and learning it. And
Right.
so it just takes some time, man. Like you could do it anywhere else. You do it once, you can do it a million other times. The only thing stopping you at that point, or making you feel at that point,
Is yourself.
is your own crappy inner dialogue that's sabotaging you. So that has nothing to do with agility. It has to do with psychology and getting over your own whatever's going on in your brain. I don't have that because I know that my own self, my own inner direction of my own self is gonna lead me true in every circumstance. So I trust in myself regardless of where I am. I hope that answers your question.
It wasn't even directed at you, was it?
It was for me, for us working together. I feel like you should jump into product management because you have very similar traits of personality as I do. Team management and building relationships and stuff that goes into the Scrum Master, you have to do all that stuff as a product manager. But the difference to me, why I'm very happy being a Scrum Master. The reason it's terrible is because as a Scrum Master, you don't couple with, normally Scrum Masters are coupled with technology people or programmers or people who were programmers and now are leadership on the product management side, you're coupled with business people. And normally when you say something on the business side, people just assume you're right and don't question it. Whereas on the other side, you got to deal with a whole bunch of nonsense. So I think having worked on both sides now, I prefer to be on the product side. I think
You can relate.
I think you should try being on the product side. If you get into an organization that allows you the flexibility to try it for a while, you should definitely try it, because I think you will quickly come to the realization of, I already have all these skills to do this job over here, Scrum Master, facilitation skills, working with people, coordinating with customers, taking input from different people and figuring out what the truth is and stuff like that. Okay, cool, you got all those skills. But now let me take it over to this side of the house that values that stuff more, right? Because these people over here that work for technology, you work for somebody who's, listen, the reality is on this side of the house, on the Scrum Master side of the house, you're working for somebody who used to be a programmer. Okay, maybe my career has been different than all y'all's different careers, but over here on the Scrum Master side of the house, I'm working for someone who either been well, that's not true too, because I could say they've been a project manager as well.
Yeah, but a pointy head, nonetheless.
Someone who's been a project manager
Yeah.
or someone who's been a developer. Okay, these people. The only reason that I bring this up with such fire is I just had this discussion with my chief product owner on the project I just started, and his exact comment to me was, none of these people can pull the vision that I have for the product out of my head and show it to me write it down and show it to me. I was like, yeah, of course, because none of these people can't think like that, and of course I'm me, so none of these people could think like that, and it comes across as because all these people are stupid. But that's a poor way of me communicating, admittedly. But he's already thinking like that. That's already his way of thinking. I'm just identifying, hey, how are you thinking? I'm thinking like this. Okay, well, I also think like this. Let's put our brains together and let's represent what we're thinking of. So that's, again, we talked about this earlier. That's the way that we did not record when we were talking about. This is the way that I think. This is the way that Jessica thinks. The way that I deal with people is, let's talk about the way we think about things, and come together on the way we think about things, and then agree on it, and let's go forward from there. Right? Your superpower is let me connect with how you feel about what's happening. And then let me get you on the same page of how we feel about what's happening, and then we'll make decisions. Because look, we were talking about last time I was here. I was like, how do you think most business leaders make their decisions? Do you think they make a list of all their facts and then pull all the facts down and then decide based on all the facts that we have about our businesses? Or do you think they just like, I think this is the future, and they just cut a decision out of the air?
Gut feel.
Yeah. I feel kind of left out when I was like, they're not really thinking about this in depth very much. Yeah, no, they're feeling their way out.
The only other thing I want to add to that, because I told you to get into product, you have control.
Yeah.
You have control. And I know you like control. You are a decision maker.
It's accurate.
You have no control when you're a Scrum Master.
Yeah, right.
So the only thing stopping you is yourself, right? With that imposter syndrome. Ditch that and try it out. Try out the product side. Seriously.
I think you like it.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Despite what you said earlier, which is everyone telling you you're doing something wrong, I think you're referring to the stakeholders, right?
Wait, what do you mean?
With the imposter syndrome that you talked about earlier.
That's just me. That's always been me.
Yeah.
That's just it's a thing. It's my own, what do we call it? Intergenerational trauma. It's me. But I get the more advanced I get and the products I bring to market, and the more it will go away. But don't forget, you guys came out of college and started working.
Yeah.
I came out of college and had babies, or I came out of, at that age I had babies. I just basically started my career in 2012.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference. I mean, I may be older than you, but I might be actually equal with you in experience years. And so I need a little bit more time and more just success to continue to feel, good. But it's hard. But yes, I still say product ownership is.
It's the way to go.
It's better.
It's the way to go.
It's interesting because you're in the Scrum Master role.
Yeah, Scrum Master role. Yeah, great Scrum Master role. The problem with the Scrum Master role is that I've been deployed a couple times as, hey buddy, these guys are. It's my hey buddy. And I haven't done that in a long time. A couple of years I haven't done that. Which is, hey, these guys just need a Scrum Master to pull their team together. And then I get in there and I find out they really need a program manager because they have multiple products and they have no idea what to do. So I end up having one or two teams, and then I have to hold the program down to coordinate at a program level. So at some level I'm doing product ownership, but I'm above product ownership with multiple products, trying to get multiple product owners to talk to each other and to bring leads into the discussion, to put items on their roadmap. And as a team product owner, you should have familiarity with what it takes to develop a roadmap, but you shouldn't be the person facilitating the roadmap discussions and the only guy putting stickers. Like, hey guys, let's put these stickies on the board. What's the business value? Basically being in the RTE type of role or something like that as a team Scrum Master. I could easily see you feeling like you're over your. You want to talk about imposter syndrome? Let me talk about a person who's doing the job like a year, 2 years, getting pulled in when a bunch of product owners can't communicate and being asked to do basically an RTE type of job. You know, that's with one product. A release train engineer under the SAFe model, where we have multiple teams trying to add to the program with one product, let alone multiple products. Where you're, I mean, if we're
No, it sounds scary.
it's
as hell.
terrible. It's terrible. Well, you're not. Nothing you do is at a team level at that point. Everything you do is you're basically a leadership. You're basically a member of leadership at that point.
Yeah.
You know, and your job is not to produce anything. Your job is just to influence people to produce other things.
You should be a member of leadership at that point.
Should be a member of leadership,
But you're not because of that title, right? Release train engineer, so all the leadership thinks is you're an engineer.
Right. Right.
Yep.
And that's the respect you get, unfortunately. You know, that little, really. So the RTE's job, yeah, no thanks.
Well, I like to end these things on a downer.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
I feel like
Is it time?
this is a great downer. I feel like I didn't even get into when the right time to walk away. We didn't even talk about anything that was straight off of my mind. Like if you're being, Tricia said, if you're being abused,
Yeah.
you know, in situations where you're being abused or your team members are being abused and you can't do anything about it,
Yeah.
you know, like.
One thing I didn't even bring up was my situation right now when I'm trying to get a team to be performing, but we can't even get to them to the forming stages because we can't get resources. So what do? You have one developer doing all the work. You're never going to get anything done. People are
Not a
upset about
team.
it, but they're not helping.
It's one person.
Yeah, the other thing that happens that's similar to that is you get a team just above forming, and then you have churn. So they go back to forming,
Yeah.
and it rinse and repeat every sprint. I've lived that as well. Yeah, and leadership don't get it. You know, you have 5 people. It's not the same 5 people.
Yeah.
It's different every sprint.
And something else that they did was they hired a lot of offshore developers because they're so cheap, so incredibly cheap. And I get why they do it. I'm looking at the budget, so I can see why clearly. But these individuals, they can't communicate very well. They're not adding value to the team. They're actually slowing down the lead developer as he's trying to teach them, right? No value added. So they're leaving one by one as they feel like leadership is realizing they're not providing value.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. So it's just this constant turn. They're bringing in a different offshore developer.
Or adding in more people. That's the other thing they do.
That's the way you do. Add more people to the mess.
Yeah.
That solves everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe in that case, it would be the right time to walk away.
Potentially, yeah, absolutely.
If you're set up for failure and you can't possibly get the team to be performing.
Yeah, but even then, depending on how long you've been there and how emotionally invested you are, you might not want to walk away. You know, my position, where I'm coming from, my position was I hired everyone on my team when I was a resource manager. Everybody that worked there, I hired. So I was not going to walk away from the team members, even though like the company got sold and I lost my influence. I should have walked away when the company got sold, because immediately when the company got sold, you don't have a budget anymore. And we have to bless everybody that you hire, basically. Things that I knew were red flags, and I should have just been whatever, man. But I stuck around because I kind of owe it to all these people, you know.
I think that's awesome though that you're a people person, and I think that I don't know you all that well, but I think that's. You mean you sacrificed yourself because you cared about those people?
When they told you don't have budget after the company was sold, that was the right time to quit.
Yeah. Yeah.